Portraits have been an essential feature of Australian banknotes for 1 century. They have highlighted notable identities from our history, ranging from kings to convicts. The first portrait on our early banknotes of the 1920s shows King George V. The convict, Mary Raby, sentenced for theft, is portrayed on our current series of banknotes. The king is seen here on the 10 shilling, and Mary Raby on the $20 banknote. Prominent artists have contributed to our banknotes. They include Napier Waller, who assisted with the design of the banknotes in the 1950s, portraying colonial explorers. The sculptor, Leslie Bowles, worked on the same series of banknotes, creating a plaster cast of Queen Elizabeth II. It became the basis for her portrait on the £1 banknote and evoked her role as the head of the British Empire. In the 1960s, the first series of decimal currency banknotes was released. It demonstrated diversity in its range of portraits. Caroline Chisholm, a renowned social worker, was portrayed on the $5 decimal banknote, issued in 1967. She was the first identified woman, other than the Queen, to appear on Australia's banknotes. The artist for the first series of decimal banknotes included one of Australia's most prolific artists, Guy Warren. Traditional subjects such as agriculture were depicted in the decimal series, with the pastoralist John MacArthur contrasted with aviation, the modern form of transport, represented by the famous aviator Charles Kingsford Smith. His image was also based on a portrait by Guy Warren. With the introduction of polymer banknotes in the 1990s, a new suite of portraits was commissioned. They comprised equal numbers of women and men. The portraits were prepared by the individual designers of the banknotes. These early designs of the banknotes show the evolution of their portraits. The poet Dame Mary Gilmore on the $10 banknote is portrayed by Max Robinson, and the Reverend John Flynn, instigator of the Royal Flying Doctors Service, by Gary Emery on the $20 banknote. David Uniapan, the First Nations author, is designed by Brian Sadgrove for the $50 banknote, and the famous soprano Dame Nellie Melba by Bruce Stewart on the $100 banknote. Beginning in 2016, the bank launched its most recent series, the Next Generation of Banknotes. The series retained the same portraits as the previous one, while incorporating new design and security features. One of the incentives for originally including portraits in our banknotes was to increase their security. We have evolved to recognize and recall details of the human face. This capacity helps us to recognize errors in portraits, including those that may occur in counterfeit banknotes. The portraits for our current banknotes were created by Note Printing Australia's designer, Robert Cook.
My name is Robert Cook and I'm the Design Manager and Acting Head of Technical Services at Note Printing Australia. The process in which to prepare a portrait is really largely dependent on the reference material that's provided. So this is the intent based on the banknote design that's either supplied by the customer or referenced for ourselves. So really this is quite a fundamental step as part of preparing the key line. And that reference can be supplied to us in any shape or form. It could be, I've had sort of instances where it's either been a painting or quite an old painting really, particularly for the NGB series. It was a miniature painting of Mary Raby that had to be produced. So again, it was understanding what you had to work with, and this can be very limited. But then that employs you to actually use your artistic skill to make an adequate reference or actually construct a reference so that it can be the best, source for you to then employ your line work. So this is an important one really as far as creating some individuality to the portrait. So as you can appreciate, if there is a certain figurehead or iconic figure known to the public, and there's a widely circulated and publicised image of that person, this is an opportunity, I suppose, to individualise that image and make it quite unique to the product. But it is also as part of the study or as your understanding of the subject matter, so you can actually understand the contours of the face and the tonality, and also improve expression or adjust contrast within the drawing or enhance features. So I suppose it's part of that process of understanding the subject and optimizing it for the product, but then also using that to then employ your line work for the intaglio process. So once we've actually generated a tonal drawing, what we would actually do is sit down and we'd actually then do a line map, or we're contourizing the face. So this is the first step in the process, to section areas of the face based on tonal values and employing a line pitch or a line structure based on principles to really generate or translate that tone into line work for the intaglio process. So really we would generate a line map, then we would actually bring that into this digital system, and then we would actually use a Wacom tablet screen to draw the remainder of the line work and build the purpose structure for the engraved lines that would then be laser engraved into plate, and then basically we actually print that. I suppose you inherently learn about the subject matter that you're intended to draw, and that gives you, I suppose, a sense of how they should be portrayed. And I think part of the research of finding multiple reference sources as well to help inform your understanding of that person, you naturally, I suppose, learn about that person as part of your research. So I suppose that Banjo Paterson, being the bush poet, or an iconic Australian poet and writer, and the iconic Akubra hat as well. So it was quite a unique portrait and quite a privilege to draw that. Yeah, I was always told that the eye is probably about maybe 60-80% of the work, because they're the most engaging aspect of the portrait, and it's what we actually engage with as humans. It's our first response is to look at people's eyes, and we're drawn to that within a portrait or a face, which is really an important one as well, not only as far as getting this correct and the engagement of that, being the users of the banknote and the public, and identifying sort of through the gaze or through the eyes of the portrait, but it can also help direct, I suppose, the portrait gaze to sort of signal features in the banknote as well. So again, if, like for instance with Banjo Paterson, it's not a three-quarter view, it's actually a side-on view. So it's almost like you're immediately looking at where he's looking at, because it's human nature, and that's what the interesting part of it is that if you're looking in one direction, I want to know what you're looking at. I'm not necessarily looking at your eyes. So it's probably a good indication, I suppose, that he could be looking at a security feature or the window design, which is quite an interesting aspect as well in terms of designing a banknote. I would have to say the Queen, because it was really this was the origin point really of the development of this series. We started with the 5, but again, it was all the excitement and enthusiasm that we were about to embark on developing these portraits, and this was the first one to be created and set the tone for the rest of the series. But as well, it's the Queen, so as you can appreciate, it's quite a proud moment to sort of represent somebody of her stature, but then to do a very good job of that as well. You see many references of the Queen on different banknotes around the world, so you're in sort of esteemed company to be able to deliver something like that and hopefully do a good job. So I'm quite proud of the result of that as well.